What is up, Hoya Nation? Welcome back to Bleeding Blue and Gray, your home for all things Georgetown basketball. I'm your host, Owen Rosen, and I am so pumped about today's episode. We've got one of Hoya fans' favorite reporters joining the show, Mr. Brian Rauf, national writer for Basket Under Review and host of the Weekend Under Review podcast, as well as having over 20,000 followers on X. We're talking year 3 of the Ed Cooley era, roster updates, and whether the Hoyas are finally turning the corner. Let's get into it. What's up, Brian?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem. So let's first start off with the state of the program, Georgetown. So it's 3 years into the Ed Cooley era. How close is Georgetown to turning the corner and becoming the powerhouse that we used to be?
Powerhouse that Georgetown used to be and turning the corner might be two different conversations. I think getting back to a tournament team and being a team that can consistently get there, I think is right around the corner. Everything that Cooley has been building has kind of been built towards this year. I think he's established more of the culture he wants. He's talked about that, this team being more defensive oriented and fitting how he wants his teams to play. So I think that's there. Getting back to being like one of the nation's elite, I think is still a pretty far way off. Like going back, I don't know if Georgetown will ever be what they were in the 80s, at least right now. That's probably still, you got to have at least 5 years of substance there before you can get to that point. But getting back to being one of the better teams in the Big East, getting back to being like a top 25 caliber team, getting to the tournament consistently, I think is right around the corner. And this is an important year for Cooley to get that done.
Yeah. As well, I've seen all your posts about how you think that they're going to be a top 25 team as well as top 3 team in the Big East. And I actually agree with that. I've had those same predictions, but could you tell me why exactly you think that?
So the Big East part, finishing third in the Big East, is as much of a reflection of how good I think Georgetown can be versus a reflection of the Big East itself. UConn and St. John's are really good. Those are 1 and 2. You can pick the order how you want to, but they're 1 and 2. Everything else behind them was pretty much up in the air in the Big East, right? I think you look at Creighton, and I'll throw Georgetown in that tier too, as being like the best of the rest. And so if you are good, which I expect Georgetown to be, but if you are good, you essentially have to beat one other team out for that third spot, right? So that's why I'm looking at Georgetown as being the third best team in the Big East and finishing third in my mind. Now, from on a roster standpoint, why I think they're going to be that good, you have Malik Mack, who is back for his second year in the system. Last year, he showed he can make the jump from the Ivy League to power conference level and be productive. He's got to be much more efficient, but typically you see efficiency jumps and another step forward in year 2 in a system, year 2 of transfers, year 2 playing at this level, right? So I'm expecting that from him. Caleb Williams, you've seen some good things there. You have the transfers coming in that all I think fit what Ed Cooley wants to do. He's talked about KJ Lewis being the best defender that he has had, which is incredibly high praise considering the defenses that he's had. And Chris Dunn at Providence went top 5 in the draft because of his defense. I don't know if KJ Lewis is as good of a defender as Chris Dunn, but that's high praise. And all of the transfers too they brought in came from winning programs or have winning backgrounds. And so when you're trying to really firmly establish a culture, that's important to have those kind of guys who know what it takes to be a winner in the margins. And that's just somewhat expected, right? You have KJ Lewis playing defense. You got Langston Love with the shooting. If I were Chukwu can give them anything, the big man transfer from St. John's who started at USC, give them anything in the middle, that's a huge bonus. He was a highly regarded high school recruit whose college career has not gone to plan since he had the heart attack at USC. Be great to see him getting back to playing at a decently high level. But you look at this team, there's depth, there's upside, there's enough scoring, but this is a team that's also going to look like some of the better Ed Cooley teams at Providence, I think, where they're going to be defense first. They're going to win games on that end. They're probably going to play slow and rather methodical, but I think there's enough offense there, led by Mack, led by Lewis being able to get downhill, led by some of the shooting they have, led by Love and some guys off the bench, that I think it won't be as clunky as it could be.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I feel like the one question that people have been having is shooting, and I think if Langston Love can stay healthy, and we also have, as you said, guys off the bench like Kayvon Mulready, who's been able to shoot in the GW scrimmage, and also when we were over at Canada, he didn't play, but we still saw these guys being able to shoot like Deshaun Harris-Smith and Malik Mack, and I think that the one question that people have been having is shooting, but I feel like we've kind of went away from that and we've been able to shoot. But I think the biggest question is being able to come back from losing two players in the NBA draft. We lost Thomas Sorber and Micah PV, and I feel like that's the one reason why we're one of the most underrated teams because people are having us at the middle to bottom of the Big East. And I completely agree with you that we're going to be a top team because I think Marquette got worse. I don't really know about Creighton that much. I don't think that they're going to be as good as they were last year. They lost Kalkbrenner, obviously. But I obviously think that KJ Lewis is one of the biggest transfers that we could have brought in. And I'm extremely happy that we brought him in. But as you said, we're a defensive team. Do you think this fits Ed Cooley's like scheme of coaching perfectly?
As close as I think it can be. I think you want to have a big guy who can move a little bit more because I would project probably Juice to play more than Iwuchukwu at first, and that's just given Iwuchukwu's track record and what he's done in the past, along with Juice's upside. And he is an anchor, which you want around the basket, around the paint, but he's not somebody who is not somebody you want to see like exposed in the perimeter. Right. And I think the best Ed Cooley teams have been more switchable and have had guys who could both protect the rim and defend on the perimeter. Other than that, though, I think this fits exactly what Ed Cooley wants. And Cooley has talked about that too, where he feels like this team is more in the identity, more of the brand that he likes to coach, the style he wants to employ. A lot of guys who can get after it, quite frankly. And I think that's going to be the hallmark of this Georgetown team is the energy they play with, the scrappiness they play with, and the toughness that you play with.
And who do you think is going to be the biggest impact newcomer and also the biggest sleeper on this team that people really aren't talking about?
Impact newcomer is going to be KJ Lewis. I think I really, really liked him at Arizona. I'm very high on Jaden Bradley as well, who is Arizona's current point guard. They shared the backcourt next to Caleb Love the last 2 years. And KJ Lewis, I think, has had a lot more potential to do more on the ball than he has done in the past. But your opportunities are limited, let's just say, to be nice when you play next to Caleb Love and you play next to a guy in Jaden Bradley who also needs the ball in his hands, some to be most effective. I think there are some things offensively. The three-point shooting has to come along with KJ Lewis. You can't shoot 19% again and be super good offensively. That's not going to happen. But there are some things he can do getting downhill that I think are going to bode really well for this Georgetown team, along with the defense that he brings. Like, I think he's going to be a pretty important player. It wouldn't surprise me if he led them in minutes, to be honest with you, as long as he stays out of foul trouble, which has been a concern of his. The biggest sleeper for me is Juice, honestly. Like, he was somebody who, with Sorber on the roster, was getting a decent amount of minutes in the rotation during the 6 games he was healthy last season.
Yeah.
Right. So the expectations were there for him to be an impact player for Georgetown. Right. Obviously the injury kind of kept things off, but he showed a lot of the positive signs that you wanted to see when he was playing in the FIBA U19 World Cup this summer. Comes over now. I think he's going to be better than people think. I don't think he's going to be an all Big East guy or anything like that. But if he can provide 12 and 8 in the middle for Georgetown, I think that's huge, and I don't think that's asking too much from him given his skill set.
I don't know if you were able to watch the Global Jam this summer where Georgetown went to Canada, but did his playing over there scare you at all? Because as a fan watching him, I was high on him as well, and it kind of scared me how he was playing because offensively he's supposed to be better than Vince, and he wasn't there offensively, and then also defensively he was kind of nowhere to be found. So did that scare you at all, or do you think it was just getting back into it?
I think part of it's getting back into it. It scared me a little bit. 12 and 8 might be getting a little ahead of myself there. Maybe we should go more 8 and 5. That probably feels a little bit better. But some of the concerns that are playing us way back into it and going from playing in like a U19 to a bit of a higher level. At the same time, Iwuchukwu, I thought, was really good. Like
Yeah.
for somebody who has been, again, I do not want to seem like I'm being critical of his career because I'm not. There's obviously the medical stuff that's played in and everything, but he has been a non-factor at both USC and St. John's. Really, that's why he's available. And so I was expecting him to be largely a non-factor for Georgetown again. And the fact that he wasn't, he was a pretty solid player, reliable player for them during that stretch, gave me more hope that, like, okay, let's say I'm wrong about Juice and he is a liability who you can't play. I think you kind of flip them. Then I think Iwuchukwu becomes somebody who I have more faith in than I did, even if I have less than Juice.
Yeah, 100%. I think Vince also St. John's. It was kind of an unlucky situation because he was just buried in their center. Like they had Zubi Ejiofor getting 30
Yeah.
minutes a game, so it's kind of hard for him to be getting any minutes. And when he was on the court, he also wasn't really providing anything to prove that he should be getting more minutes. But I'm very high on Juice and Vince, and I think that them two together is a very good duo compared to what we had last year, which was basically Sorber and Fielder, who's now at Boise State. And you said KJ Lewis is the most impactful newcomer. I agree. It's pretty obvious that that's Ed Cooley's expectation. Do you think he could fill the void lost of Micah Peavy?
I think that's the expectation. I don't know if he's going to carry the same offensive burden that PV did or had to often last season, but I think defensively he can. And I could see him filling like more of the Malik Mack role offensively, the Malik Mack role from last year, who was secondary scoring and inefficient, but secondary scoring next to PV, because I am expecting Mack to take another step forward and be an all Big East caliber guy and be somebody who the offense revolves around. So if he takes that step up, I think he is more of the PV from like your points per game standpoint, and KJ Lewis can slide into the role that Mack was in last year.
And how do you feel about transfer Deshaun Harris-Smith from Maryland? Over at the Global Jam, he had very good numbers, and then the GW scrimmage, it kind of looked like he was getting a little slower and not playing as well. But in Global Jam, he was basically our best player. How do you feel about him?
Highly regarded high school prospect, went to Maryland with high expectations, and became relatively unplayable for what they wanted to do. Now, Maryland last year, had the Crab Five, and then had like two guys come off the bench. And Harris Smith was so good enough to come off the bench in that aspect. So in that sense, that's a positive sign. I think defensively he can provide a good bit. I think attacking the basket, he can provide a good bit. But asking him to stand around and be a shooter at this point in his career is not something he's good at, capable with. I think getting him in a bench role where he can be more of a factor on a bench unit is better than him trying to be a starter and carrying a pretty heavy offensive burden. That was what Maryland had originally tried. That didn't work, and I think he needed a fresh start somewhere. And Georgetown, I think, is a good place for that fresh start, given what's on this roster and the opportunity for him to come in and be an important bench guy right away.
Yeah, I mean, we see like Georgetown, basically all of their transfers are all highly regarded recruits who kind of didn't really flesh out what they were supposed to be in college, except for really KJ Lewis. We have Isaiah Abraham from UConn, who was a top recruit and ended up not really playing that well. But another question I have for you is recruiting and the recruiting aspect. We brought in 0 freshmen this year, and Ed Cooley said that was the plan to bring in none. How do you feel about this recruiting class? Because we're going for some of the biggest names like Jordan Smith Jr., Caden Samuels, and Alex Constanza.
It'll work if Georgetown wins on the court this season, right? Like I think Cooley is going all in on being good this season. And while bringing in freshmen, right, is good for the long-term health of your program, for an immediate boost, you don't rely on freshmen unless they're like the high-end guys. And of the high-end guys, who you've seen how good they are during exhibition season, Georgetown wasn't getting any of them. Right. Like that was out of the question. So I like the strategy of leaning into the portal because this is a really important season for his tenure. Like everything's kind of been building towards this. And if you go 3 years and you don't have legitimate progress to really show for it, like a tournament berth to show for it, or at least a bubble conversation to show for it, then there starts being questions about your job and your long-term prospects with the program. So I think going on is good. If you can parlay that into recruiting success, that's when things start building on itself and it starts becoming like institutionalized almost. And so I think it's smart, but Patrick Ewing's tenure kind of hit this inflection point too. I think it was year 3 where you had a Kinjo, you had back McClung, and it looked like things were going well. Then there was the off court stuff that derailed that before I could get started, and the rest of Ewing's tenure just went down the toilet basically.
Yeah.
I'm not comparing the two, other than I think this season is the same kind of inflection point for Cooley's tenure. And it's clear he's going all in on it being a positive one. And I think the recruiting is setting itself up to capitalize on that if they do win a number of games.
Yeah, and he always said it from the day he was hired that year 3 was the year that he was going to do something and bring Georgetown to be something, because you can't really expect him to, in 1 year, bring this team back to the top of the Big East. It's just not possible, and it's not something you could expect. And obviously he has a way better schedule than last year, the non-conference schedule. It's just we see so many better matchups. Which games do you think will tell us the most about Georgetown this season, non-conference or conference?
The Creighton games are the ones I'm circling, because you have to, if you're going to finish third, you have to beat Creighton to do that. UConn, you're going to learn a lot about, because you have to be well coached and you're going to have to play really good defense to beat UConn's offense. From a non-conference standpoint, I think Maryland is very vulnerable. First year again under new coach, the whole new roster. Pretty much, there's going to be a lot of emotion around that game, just given the regional rivalry there. So I think that's going to be important. Clemson's kind of in the same boat too, where they're replacing a lot from last year. I'm not as high on Clemson as a lot of people are. And so you look just the first 2 weeks of the season, assuming you don't lose to Morgan State and Binghamton, right? Let's just assume there's no disasters, but you're able to beat one of Maryland, Clemson, or both. I think you show that there is a pretty high level you can reach this season, or at least a pretty high floor you can be at. Lose both, and I think there are real questions about what the season holds. But if you get through that stretch 4-0, you're going into Thanksgiving and feast week feeling like, okay, we're making progress. We're going the right direction. Georgetown may have something this year.
Yeah, and we play Maryland very early, and as you said, new coach, new roster. We play them our second game and their second game. It's a very easy place to have them be caught off guard and not be ready for us, and we can just attack and win that game. You also have UNC as one of your top 25 teams. How do you think that game plays out? I think it's towards the end of non-con.
Yeah, the game's in Chapel Hill, December 7th, I want to say. Hoping to be able to go to that one. I think UNC is a very good team. And so this is another kind of segue into that. I think this UNC team reminds me of the team that won the ACC 2 years ago, as opposed to some of Hubert Davis's failures and flameouts. So Georgetown going there and losing, I don't think you could take anything really away from if UNC is as good as I think they're going to be. What that game will test, though, is the front court, because UNC's got, talk about Arizona transfers, Henry Vasar is phenomenal in the middle. Caleb Wilson's going to be a top 5, top 10 pick in the NBA draft. He's awesome. You have Jaren Stevenson come from Alabama as well. The front court for UNC, I think people are sleeping on how good it really is. And if that is your major question with Georgetown, that's a great test before you get into Big East play of how you handle those caliber of front courts. Again, the best of the best. If Georgetown loses that game, it's okay, because UNC is pretty good. A win would, I'm probably going to be obnoxious on Twitter. I assume all of Georgetown fans will be obnoxious on Twitter if they win that game. But that's, I think, what you can learn from in that one is how a real big front court, talented front court, how you handle that.
And, well, obviously UNC you think is a good team, but what about losing Elliot Cadeau and also Ian Jackson? Ian Jackson's now going to be at St. John's. How do you feel about him? And he also didn't start in their exhibition game. How do you think Georgetown could go about beating these teams that have top guys like Ian Jackson on their bench?
I think Ian Jackson being on the bench says more about Ian Jackson than it does about St. John's. That could be an issue there. But that's, you look at the bench, it's going to be a lot of transfers for Georgetown, but it's all transfers that have won and transfers that have been productive. I don't think you're going to get a full bench unit on the court for Georgetown where you have 5 guys who are 6 through 10 in your roster. I think these pieces you're going to see them staggered with a lot of the starters, whether that's Mike Mack, whether that's KJ Lewis sliding into more of the point guard type role, and they supplement each other really well. There may be lesser versions of starters, but I think other than Mack, And other than KJ Lewis, you have guys who you can really rotate through and not lose a ton, which is a good thing. You don't have maybe the like superstar six man or anything like that, but there is some quality depth where you can go 8 deep, 9 deep, and I don't think lose a ton.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something that Ed Cooley has been preaching towards during this offseason, that we have so many players on our bench that can always play and will always be ready to play, and no one's just going to be sitting there not getting in unless you're obviously a walk-on or someone who literally can't play, but everyone else is going to be able to play if they need them. And that was something that kind of killed our team last year, was injuries. We had so many injuries last year. Thomas Sorber. Before Thomas Sorber got injured, we were basically a bubble team. We beat Creighton by 30. We were leading St. John's by 30 at halftime at MSG. Like, we were proving ourselves, and then right when he got injured, it kind of went all downhill. Caleb Williams got injured. So many guys got injured. So this year, I think if people do get injured, we have the team to keep going, and it won't stop us as much as it did last year. And then my final question to you is, can this Georgetown team, make a postseason run that's not the Crown? Ed Cooley said he's never going to be playing in the Crown again, and it's a stupid tournament. He'll never do it again. Do you think we could make March Madness?
Yes, I think this is an NCAA tournament team. For like a legitimate run, I don't know. I consider a run to be like you win a couple of games. This is a team I think can get in, and depending on matchup, win a game, maybe even two, and get to a Sweet 16 if everything breaks right. But I would cap it out as a Sweet 16. I hope that you come back to this and you quote it because you're playing it because Georgetown's going to the Final Four or what have you. But that, I don't see that being the case. I don't see that kind of a high-end upside with this team, especially compared to how many teams I think have truly elite ceilings in college basketball this season. Georgetown doesn't have that elite ceiling, but they have a pretty high one, and it's one that I think should get them to the tournament, could win a game, maybe two. Again, so much in the tournament depends on matchups and who's in your pod and where your pod is even, and things like that. So I'm not going to rule out a Sweet 16 run for Georgetown, but I would cap Georgetown's season as probably a Sweet 16.
And this will actually be my final question. We play Kentucky tonight at, I think, 7 p.m. in an exhibition game. Number one, do exhibition games matter? And number two, what happens if Georgetown can beat Kentucky when we're both playing starters in an exhibition game?
Results do not matter. Things that happen in the game do, right? Sets that work, rotations that work, things like that matter. The final score does not, because this is your time to tinker with whatever. If you're a coach, and a lot of coaches take advantage of that. If Georgetown wins, give it everything that came out of the Kentucky exhibition whenever Purdue. I think Georgetown fans should be puffing their chest out a little bit and feel real good going into the season.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you very much, Brian, for coming to speak to me. And I hope you're right about all of your predictions. We kind of have similar predictions. I think that there'll be a top 3 team, a top 25 team, and make it to the Sweet 16. So very happy that you came on to talk with me, and thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it, Owen. Thanks for having me.